me hear you say ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da. Crazy at this thing called love, just what I've been dreaming of. And I can never figure out, oh, how you do the things you do. Is why I'm so in love with you. I like the way you make me smile. Boy, you give me butterflies. And when I look into your eyes, I'll see the future in me and you. That's why I wrote this song for you. I-L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. I-L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. Just want you to know what I think of you. L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. Baby, you've got what it takes to make your girl say L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. If I met you in another life and you asked me to be your wife, with grace and a smile I say, yeah, always now and forever. You be my one and only lover. Cause I like the way you make me smile. Boy, you give me butterflies. And when I look into your eyes, I'll see the future in me and you. That's why I wrote this song for you. I-L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. I-L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. Just want you to know what I think of you. L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. Baby, you've got what it takes to make your girl say L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. Ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da.
We got something.
Good morning. Welcome to Lieutenant Commander J.R. Glapohkpa Chesson talk show on this beautiful Saturday, June the 24th, 2023. We know that in Liberia, there's a messed up situation. Our former Chief Justice is waking up this morning, not in the police cell, but in the central prison in Monrovia. South Beach Prison. Can you imagine that? The former Chief Justice of the Republic of Liberia is now at South Beach Prison for murder. So let's look at what happened yesterday. They went to court. The court was a city court. It's a magisterial court. In Liberia, those courts are courts of no records. That means that the judge does not take any records. They go into court, the judge hears the case, the judge gave his judgment, and it's acted upon. If there's an appeal from the city court, the magisterial court, the justice of the peace court, all those courts are courts of no records. If there are appeals from those courts, they come to the court of records, which is the circuit court. The circuit court of Liberia is the first court of record. Okay? That's the court that has jurisdiction over land matters, over murder matters, over other criminal matters. They have complete jurisdiction, full jurisdiction over them. That's why the judge, the magistrate in the city court yesterday, when they brought a case before him with Gloria Scott, he had no jurisdiction over that case because that's a murder case. A murder case is a case of record. It's a capital crime. Any court lower than the circuit court cannot handle those cases. They have no jurisdiction. The justice of the peace, the magistrate court, the city court, all those Babadis courts, they are called courts of no records. So they cannot handle those cases. That's why the judge, Judge Baco or whoever he was, when they brought the case before him with Gloria Scott, pleading for bail and other remedies from the court, he said, hey, I have no jurisdiction over this case. I'm a court of no, he was telling them that I'm a court of no record. I do not record anything. I have no jurisdiction over this case. Okay? This is a subject matter that does not come within the purview of this court. So you got to take it to a higher court. So the same thing with other cases. Whenever you have cases in the Justice of the Peace Court, the Magistrate Court, all of the Babadi courts, when you go to them, when they hear your case and you appeal from them to the Circuit Court, all the records for those courts are null and void. They are forwarded to the Circuit Court. Okay? That is the court of record. That is the first court in Liberia, the Circuit Court. That was Judge Baco was saying, hey, this subject matter is above me. I cannot handle it. He could not deal with any matter in that case because it was totally above him. It's a capital crime. Okay? City courts have no jurisdiction over them. Okay? It goes to the Circuit Court. So they're going to send this case to the Circuit Court. Now, the issues that were raised during this case by the defense was one, there was no grand jury. In most criminal cases under our law that provides for grand jury, the grand jury is different from the jury that hears the trial jury. Okay? There are two different juries. Grand jury is different. The trial jury is usually 6 or 12 people, whereas the grand jury can be between 16 and 23 people. The regular jury sits only for a case and hears only that case and disband. The grand jury can serve for 6 months to a year. They do not hear one case. They hear all different cases up to a year. And the difference between the trial jury and the grand jury is that the grand jury does not deal with cases. It only deals with probable cause. The grand jury's duty is to determine whether there's enough evidence from the prosecution to indict a criminal. Usually, a grand jury prosecution is private, it's secret, it's not made public. It is made secret. Okay, the defense lawyer is not there. Okay, no witnesses are called usually. It is only a prosecution matter because the prosecutor want to make sure that the case is proffering or carrying forward. It's a case that has probable cause. What is probable cause? the main reason the case came to fruition. The elements of the crime. Was this a crime committed? Every crime has elements. Okay? You look for the body of the crime. We look for the element of the crime, the weapon. We look for who committed the crime. Those are elements of crimes. So when all those things are met, the grand jury, their job is to listen to all the evidence from the prosecution. The defense lawyer will not be there. There will be no witnesses. It's a secret thing. The grand jury is secret. Why? Because there are some cases the grand jury will hear that are of fiduciary nature, where money is involved and corporation and corporate people, secret dealings and things like that. So they don't make it public. They don't want everybody to know about it. It's a private affair. It's secret, where only the prosecution bring the evidence to the grand jury. Okay? The grand jury is usually male. They are between 16 to 23 people. But the quorum, that what makes it different from a regular trial jury. A trial jury can be 6 or 12 people. A grand jury is between 16 to 23 people. And there has to be a quorum. The quorum has to be 16 people under American law. Some American law, I don't know what the quorum for Liberian law is, whether they follow the same 16 jurors to make a quorum. So when you have a quorum, the prosecution comes and presents all the evidence it has. Okay? And this is where everything is truthful. There's no lies, there's no secret. They present everything it has to the jurors, and the jurors debate it, and they determine whether or not they should indict this man, whether there's enough evidence for probable cause to indict somebody. Okay? So when they indict you, then you go on and they impanel a trial jury, which is usually between 6 and 12. It depends on what the law of the area is, 6 and 12. And the difference is the grand jury, as I told you, is secret. No defendant, no witnesses, and nothing. Whereas the trial witness, they have jury, defendant, and their decision results in the outcome of the case. They determine guilty or not guilty. That's the trial jury. And that's the difference between the trial jury and the grand jury. The grand jury has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. All they want to look at is there enough evidence from the prosecution to charge John Brown with murder. That's all. And the reason why they serve for 6 months to a year is because the grand jury will not look at only one case. In that year, all the criminal cases that come out, all the murder cases, all the property crimes, the grand jury will be impaneled for a year. And they can call upon them anytime to look at different cases. They don't look at only one case. They look at every criminal case to determine whether there is probable cause. Okay? And you remember I told you there has to be 16 people for there to be a quorum. So if one set of 16 want to be here today and some people don't want to come to the next thing, as long as they have 16 people there, that's a quorum for the case to proceed, for the prosecution to proceed. So everything is secret. The public never hears about it. All the public sees is the indictment from the prosecution. Okay? And over the years, people have been against grand jury trials. Why the grand jury conviction indictment? Because people feel that the prosecution control the grand jury too much. The grand jury is really an instrument under the prosecution because there are people that don't know the law. So when the prosecution call them together, the prosecution educate them on the law, tell them about the law, everything, then they have to come up with whether the person is guilty or not. I mean, whether they should be charged or indicted or not. So some people feel that the prosecution has too much control over the grand jury. Okay, but nonetheless, it's still the part of our law. It is Article 21H of the Liberian Constitution that before any crime, person can be charged with a capital crime, except that person is in the military or Coast Guard or something. Only a few people are exempt. But all other people must have a grand jury conviction. Okay? That's a right under the law. That's why in the Madras's court, the defense was saying, hey, there was never a grand jury in panel to indict these people. So how you indict them with murder and conspiracy to commit murder and blah, 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 when they have never been convicted? A grand jury has never been in panel. So that's the purpose of the grand jury, right? Our law said no person is to answer for any capital or infamous crime without a grand jury. So the grand jury must determine probable cause. That's the whole purpose of the grand jury. Just to look at it, it's an investigatory and accusatory body. They accuse you and they investigate the evidence to find out whether you should be accused or charged. So that's the purpose of the grand jury. That's why they were racing down in lower court. Let me bring my boy on from Liberia, Mr. Samuel Wicker. Sam, how you doing? Sam? Sam? I see, I can see in the background, but every time I put the picture of it, not coming up. But okay, since that is the case, let me finish with my thing. So that is the purpose of the grand jury. So, and that was the argument of this group and the defense. There's no grand jury. You never had a grand jury. So how can you come up with probable cause? That is the law. Somebody must look at the evidence and determine. You're having problem. Sam, you having problem in Liberia? How you doing?
Yeah, Ron. You know, sometimes the network drop. I will come on, it will go off.
Yeah, I know.
I will outdoor.
Okay, I was still talking about this glorious.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I listen to the role and the jury, the grand jury, the trial jury. You think the trial jury? I mean, how are they selected?
You gotta go out and come out again, Sam. You're not sounding good. Go out and come out again.
The network is okay. Let me go off and come again.
While I'm waiting for him, let me explain something. He asked me, how do they select the grand jury? The grand jury is selected from the same pool of jurors that the court has. Okay? For every case that comes out, the court does what they call a juror selection. Okay? The whole process is called voir, which means to tell the truth. Is a Latin word. But under the law, voir is a process where the law, let me come back on, let me explain to him. You ask how the lawyers how the grand jury is selected.
Yeah, the grand jury and the
Okay. You know that every person in the country is supposed to serve on the jury. You are all supposed to do jury duty. So
okay.
The jury is elected by the lawyers, the prosecution and the defense lawyer. what they do, they have a pool of jurors sitting down. And what they do, they select the jurors, okay, in the different case, therefore a general selection process. The prosecution and the defense lawyers will select a pool of jurors. They will ask them certain questions. The whole process is called voir dire, where they question the jurors. They ask them how they feel about certain crimes, what do they object to it, what on certain crimes, because they want to find out whether they are impartial or not. They want to find out whether they are impartial, and whether when they sit on the case, they will be able to adjudicate or adjudge the case fairly. They will be able to render a fair juror judgment on the case. So the juror and the prosecution, the defense and the prosecution question the people. The government will send out letters to people, say, we want you to be a juror. You are called to juror duties. And there will be a pool of people that will come into juror duty. And for each, the grand jury serves for 6 years 6 months to 1 year. So they will select people within that pool to do juror duty. And that whole pool will consist of grand jury and regular jury. So they will question all the jurors, and they will select the grand jury. And from that pool, they were supposed to take 23 people to be grand jury to serve for 1 year, 16 months to 1 year, 6 months to 1 year. That's how long the grand jury serve. And the grand jury does not serve on one case. The grand jury is there. Their job is not to determine whether you are guilty or not guilty. The grand jury job is just to look at all the evidence the prosecution got. The cases against people they got the cases they got against people for crime. All the grand jury is supposed to do, look at the evidence. The prosecution will bring the evidence to the grand jury. Say, this is the evidence. Now, the difference between the grand jury and the regular jury, he's going again. The difference between the grand jury and the regular jury is that the grand jury has 23 people on the jury, 23 jurors. And of those 23 jurors, only 16 can form a quorum to look at the evidence. Okay? Now these jurors are set aside. They will serve for 6 months to a year, depending on how many cases the government has. Now their job is not to determine the guilt or innocence of the accused. Their job is to look at the evidence that the prosecution will give them. That's why usually the defense isn't there. No witnesses are there. It's just the prosecution and the defense. He presenting all the witnesses to the grand jury, and they evaluating all the witnesses, they evaluating all the evidence to see if the evidence is sufficient enough to bring the case to court. That's probable cause. They want to find out if there's enough causation. Okay? You got to have reason to bring cases to court. And there must be a reason. And the reason is the cause. They're looking at the cause. Is there a reason to take this case to court? What are the reasons? Are the evidence strong enough to suggest that these people committed murder or committed whatever capital crimes they committed? That's the grand jury. So the impanel is the grand jury is there at the will and pleasure of the prosecution. When any time somebody commit a crime, they call the grand jury out. You know, the grand jury is supposed to be 23 people. So from the pool of jurors, they select 23 people to serve for 1 year as 6 months to 1 year. And whenever cases come out, the prosecution can say, impanel the grand jury. So when they bring the grand jury together, they look at all the evidence in the case and they decide whether there is probable cause or not. Okay? Whether it's sufficient evidence to carry the case forward. Now, the selection, the decision of the grand jury is different from the trial jury. Okay, there are some trial juries. All the decisions got to be unanimous. That means all of them got to agree, or it is hung jury. That means the jury don't agree. The case got to start all over. But with the grand jury, it's a little different. Okay, they do. I think they deal with more majority rule. How many people in favor of indicting this person, and they vote on it and go away. Okay, and they indict the person, but it is more of a voting process. So when they indict the person, then they give the prosecution the authority to carry the case forward. So the purpose of the grand jury is just to ensure that there is sufficient evidence to carry the case forward. So the grand jury doesn't determine guilty or not. That's not their job. All their job is to listen. The grand jury is secret. It's not public. It is secret. The quorum got to be 16 jurors. All of them will listen to every evidence. They will listen to all the prosecution statements and everything, and they will vote on whether to indict or not. And that is from where the prosecution takes its cue from to serve an indictment against somebody. So in the case of Musu Scott, there was no grand jury settled. And that is why the defense is asking for grand jury prosecution. They say, hey, how y'all got to these charges when there were no grand jury? Where is the grand jury? Because according to our law, a person cannot be charged with a capital offense without a grand jury hearing the evidence for probable cause. So how can you charge Gloria Musu Scott with a capital offense without a grand jury hearing the evidence? So that was their thing, which is a constitutional right that is afforded to the defendant. A grand jury must be impaneled to look at all the evidence, because what the law is saying to us is, yes, the justice ministry may be right. They may have all the evidence down, but we want more, because you're dealing with a person's life, you're dealing with a person's livelihood, you're dealing with a person in the community. So let people from the community hear the case. You can guide them on the law, but let them hear the case and determine, yes, there is enough cause, there is enough evidence, there's enough proof for the state to charge this person. Because you don't want the prosecution alone to take a responsibility of charging somebody. Then we come to find out that there was no need to really charge that person, that the jury would not really agree to it. Because in most capital cases, you have to have a jury, and it has to come from the peers of the defendant. So if you panel a grand jury from the same peers, and then look at the evidence and determine that there is probable cause to indict this person, more likely than none, the trial jury will determine the same thing. Why? Because the grand jury is taken from the same pool of jurors as the trial jurors. Okay? But they are just separated because their job is accusatory, investigatory. Their job is to look at the evidence, to investigate the evidence, and to accuse whoever they think is guilty. So when they accuse them, that's an indictment. The indictment is served. Okay? Then from that same pool of jurors, you take the trial jurors out. And their time is only for that case, to deal with that case. So it may be 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, whatever long the case has to go for. That trial jury handles only that case. And their job is to determine guilt or innocence. And usually there are between 6 and 12 jurors. Okay? They are between 6 and most of them, in some cases, I don't know if a lot of cases, but the jurors got to be unanimous. If they're not unanimous, all of them got to agree. Some cases, you can have majority agreeing. But in other cases, if all of them don't agree together on the charge, to charge that person, you have what you call a hung jury. That means the jury did not agree. The case is null and void. You got to throw the case out. Okay? So either you charge the person again and come up with more evidence, or let the case go. So that way we are with this case. Now the second point they raised was chapter 13.1 of the Criminal Code. They're looking at the bail, whether the crime is bailable. So the court gives leeway for people who don't have, if the court does not have enough evidence to really convict you of the crime of murder, your crime can be bailable. It can be bailable. If you're not a risk, if you're not a flight risk, if you're a permanent member in the society, if you have a lot to lose if you run away, the court may grant you bail. You see? But they couldn't grant, in this case here, the court didn't even look at bail because they had no jurisdiction over anything in the case. So there was in the city court, they got no jurisdiction over anything. So the judge was saying, look, whether you want bail, you don't want bail, whether you think you want grand jury, you don't want grand jury, that's not my prerogative. I do not have the authority to handle this case. It is not within my jurisdiction. That's why he calls subject matter jurisdiction. It's a capital crime. It's a subject matter. The subject matter is capital crime. He does not have jurisdiction over that. He told you his jurisdiction is over misdemeanor. Things that do not amount to crime. Misdemeanor is you can spend 1 year in jail or you be fined or let minimum fine. But it's fine or up to a year of jail or both. So anytime you hear about misdemeanor, you can't exceed a year in jail. Okay? You can serve up to a year in jail. Up to. So anywhere from 1 year to a year in jail. But nothing over that. Okay? Misdemeanor does not cover over a year in jail. Okay? And they are not really crimes. So they can be expunged. They can be erased after a certain number of years. They're not as hard to erase as real crimes. Okay? So Sam just came back on, but I don't know if I should bring him back on because there's this issue, you see. So Gloria Scott is in jail right now, and her case, as of Monday, is going to be transferred to the circuit court. The circuit court in Liberia is the first court of record. That means they have a stenographer in there, a woman with that machine where she types everything the judge said, everything the defendant said, everything the prosecution said. From the circuit court, all the cases go in the law book. The city court, the magistrate court, They don't go in the law books. You see the big law books where they say volume 1, so and so, circuit court. Those, all the cases from the circuit court up go in the law books. Why? Because from the circuit court, you have appeals. And most of those cases in those law books come from the appellate court. Appellate court. When you get to appellate court and you don't, that's the final court in our jurisdiction. Okay? So you got the appellate court with one judge hearing the case on the bench. You can appeal from that one judge to the full bench. That's the furthest you can appeal. From that one bench, you can ask permission from the court to have the whole bench hear the case. So that's the furthest you can go in our legal system. So you come from the circuit court to the Supreme Court. Okay? The Madras's Court, the Justice of the Peace Court, the City Court, all the courts deal with cases of no record. Okay? You can go to jail and all for cases in the courts, but if you appeal them, all the records for those courts got to be sent to the Supreme Court. They don't keep no record. If you go to the court and say, oh, I had a case here day before yesterday, can you find a record for my case? They say, we don't keep records, brother. No records. Go to the Supreme Court. So there are courts of no records. That means they don't keep the detailed record of cases. They don't have dockets. They don't have none of those kind of things. Even if they do have dockets, that's just to list who cases coming up next, but no real impact as the circuit court and all of that. Okay? All those things are taken to the circuit court. That's where all the court of records start. So this judge was right. He had no subject matter jurisdiction. He had no jurisdiction at all over the case. And that's why the former Chief Justice got to stay in jail till Monday morning when she can go to the circuit court. And the circuit court receive all the record from the lower court and it just reviews it. And then in that court, they can argue for bail. They can argue for grand jury trial, that there was a mishandling of the child, or the charges. She was mischarged. She wasn't correctly charged. They need to go back and do a grand jury hearing and charge her correctly. Look at the evidence. Because without a grand jury trial and charge, the evidence is not complete. Because under our law, under the Constitution, the grand jury is empowered to be the precursor to any indictment for capital or infamous crime. So if you do not go to the grand jury, it's illegal. It's unlawful. The charge against her is unlawful. So they got to go to the grand jury. Or we'll see if there's some aspect of the law I haven't learned yet. Because some practicality of the law, they don't teach you in school. So we'll see if there's some practicality of the law that affords them the ability to charge her with all the grand jury hearing. But under the Constitution of Liberia, except you're in the military or Coast Guard or you have special treatment, you must be given trial. You must be indicted by a grand jury. The police can't do it by themselves. So the Justice Ministry can't do it by itself. They must impanel a grand jury to look through the evidence before they can conclude that. And as for Article 13.1, it's saying that if you commit a crime of murder and there's not sufficient evidence to bring the crime up to murder, and maybe the police need more time to investigate or need more leeway to seek out more evidence, you got to get a person bail because the evidence you got does not sustain the full weight of the crime. Okay, when I was in corrections here in the state of Rhode Island, we have people that commit murder but the police could not prove it fully that they committed this murder. But they had enough evidence for the judge to be suspect of them being suspicious. There were people of interest, but they weren't suspects. So the evidence didn't reach to that part to make them suspects. So there were people of interest, and they couldn't let them go because maybe they were flight risk or some other reason. They couldn't let them go. So they put them on home confinement where I worked. They put the bracelet on them so we could monitor them and know where they are. Okay? You still escape, you can cut the bracelet and escape, but at least when you escape, we know at the exact time you escape when you cut that bracelet. Because as soon as you cut it, we got a message that you cut the bracelet and the police can start looking for you. Whereas if we didn't have the bracelet and you escape, and we didn't know, it would take 2-3 days before the police even know you escaped, before they can put you on the skip status. Because even if you on misdemeanor status in the public and you're now on the skip status, the police cannot look for you. Okay, if you're in a community on home confinement, on some misdemeanor status, the police will not look for you if you're not on a skip status. So with the monitor bracelet, once you cut that monitor bracelet and throws it away or leave it at home, we know you cut it. And when you cut it, there's an indication that you want to escape. So right there, we'll call your house. Why you not answer? We put you in the escape status right away. Okay? Because we don't want a waste of time. The quicker the police know you have escaped, the quicker they can catch you at the bus station, on the bus, on the train, or something they can catch you before you leave the state. But if they don't know, in 2-3 days, you got a great leeway to get away. So that's why the court puts you on bracelet. They say, oh yeah, the evidence not that much to hold you in jail on a capital crime. So we'll let you go, but to ensure that you are not a flight risk, that you come by the court, we'll put you on the home confinement bracelet. Let somebody monitor you. So when they put you on that bracelet, you are monitored for 24 hours a day. Your whole activities monitored. What you do, how you pray, how you eat, how you go to church, you monitor. So if you cut that bracelet for any reason and say you run away, right there it send a message to the computer in the prison that they may cut the bracelet. And we'll call the police, whether we call the state police, that's an escapee. First we'll call your house to verify it's not a mistake, that your dog didn't bite the bracelet off your foot or something didn't cut it off your foot. And we don't get no answer, then we'll put you on escape status. We're calling the police. Right there, they're starting to look for you. All the police know you escaped. Your picture all over, blah, blah, blah. They're going to start looking for you. So that's the thing about capital crimes. They are non-bailable. But if the evidence does not step up to the level where they should be held on some kind of culpability, why will you hold a man, prevent a man from being bailed? You got to have some evidence that a man committed a crime for us to just keep the man in jail. What if the kids do come up for 6 months? You keep the man in jail for 6 months? His family depending on him for daily bread. So if the evidence does not rise to any sufficient level where there's probable cause, some level of probable cause, you got to get a man bail. You got to consider giving him bail or putting him on monitor status. But the only thing with Liberia, unlike America, we don't have no home confinement. We can't monitor you. So if the court let you go on a capital crime, how sure are we you going to come back? How sure are we can even find you? How sure are we you going to even stay in the state? We're not sure. There's no guarantee in America, too, that the home confinement bracelet and all those things will show that you stay in the state. There is no guarantee, but at least we know the very moment you cut that bracelet to escape, we have ample time to start checking on you. That gave us enough time to close the borders, to send police to all the bus stops, to all the train stations. Whereas if you don't have that bracelet, we don't know whether you escape or not. Because once that bracelet on your foot, we know where you are. If you go downtown, we know you downtown. You go on a train, we know you on the train. We go on the ship, we know you on the ship or somewhere over water. We know you somewhere out of your house. You see? But and we know where you are. We know the vicinity because it will show us on the computer the vicinity you had. So we can send people in the vicinity to look for you. That's why they cut the bracelet, because when you cut it, then we have no connection to you. We can't pinpoint anywhere you at. So you go on. So that way but the only thing it gave us leeway to notify the police that you have escaped, so they can start looking for you. Okay? But those are the situations involving Gloria Scott case. And that is why she is in the South Beach prison right now, awaiting her hearing on Monday. Now, there was no grand jury. Will the prosecution be able to set up a grand jury by Monday morning to hear the evidence and go ahead with the charge or modify the charge? Would they be able to do that? So we'll see what will happen Monday. We'll see if these same defenses that were raised by the defendant and Gloria Musu Scott will still hold. One, there was no grand jury hearing to indict her. Two, she won bail because the evidence did not rise to any palpable cause to keep her in jail. Yes, they got murder charge against her, but what's the evidence? Is the evidence sufficient? Is it believable? Those are the things we'll look at Monday when the court look at these things, because these same issues will be raised. Because our law states, Article 21A states, that you can't charge somebody without a grand jury looking at the charges and determining that there is probable cause. So as it is right now, Gloria Musu Scott is in jail without probable cause. Somebody put her in jail and not the grand jury. So where is the grand jury indictment? That's where the grand jury comes in. Because you can't indict anybody on our law without a grand jury looking at the evidence and concluding that the investigation leads to a causation of death. So that's where we are right now. And I'm sure these things will be raised Monday, and you can look forward to the kid. Let me bring Sam. Oh. Sam? Sambo? You muted. Sam, you muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, I'm saying the network is my problem here now this morning.
Yeah, but forget about it.
It's fluctuating.
Yeah, so what you gotta say?
Yeah, I try to understand what you're saying about the grand jury and the trial jury. And I couldn't get it when it comes to the trial jury. So who is higher? The trial or the grand? Which one higher?
It's not about higher. Nobody looking for higher than you. What are you talking about higher? The people they're looking about jury, their functions are different. They come from the same pool of jurors where the lawyer and the defendant got to question the jurors. There's a pool of jurors there. But the grand jury serve for 6 months to a year. And their job is not to hear cases. Their job is not to determine whether people guilty or not. That's not their job. Their job is their job is secret. All the grand jury is secret. The prosecution called the grand jury. They're supposed to be the minimum of 16. They come together. They bring the defendant in. They see all the evidence. They hear the defendant. If he got something to say, then they decide whether the prosecution should indict the defendant for a crime or not. That's all their job. Then their job.
But in some instances, they can compromise the case.
We must compromise. They
will bribe. They receive bribe.
That's not a grand jury job. What you will see bribe? What we do? Their job is to indict you. So they can't. What bribe will do about it? Bribe can't do nothing. Because there's 16 people, 16 to 23 people, and 16 got to be quorum. All their job is just to hear the case. You will not even know when they're coming together. Only the prosecution know that. That's why the case is secret. Nobody can hear it. Nobody will know when they're coming together. How you bribe? You can't bribe them. So they will just call them together.
So in the case of the drug case, the 100 million drug case, we learn that the jury was bribed 500,000. Is it a trial jury?
The trial jury. The trial jury is different. The trial jury. The grand jury is just to charge you. The grand jury is just to look at the evidence and say, yeah, there's enough evidence because you are being tried by your peers. The trial jury is by your peers. So the people who look at the evidence got to be your peers too, because the state does not want to waste money prosecuting you for nothing. So they get your peers to look at the evidence and say, yes, there is enough evidence to charge you. That's all they do. Their job is not to determine whether you're guilty or not. Their job is just to look at the evidence, and that one is secret because they don't want everybody knowing about the evidence. So the grand jury hearing is secret. Only the prosecutor, no witness, no defendant, nothing. Only the prosecution and the jurors. He come together, they bring the witness, they present all the evidence, they question the witness, then they decide whether this witness should be charged with a crime or not. Then they finish with that case. They finish. Then they got to panel another jury to do the trial. Okay, that's not the same jury. Because the grand jury is there for 6 months to a year. Once they charge you and indict you, they finish with you. They got to set up another panel of jury to select another panel of 6 or 12 jurors to hear the case. So these are different jurors that will hear the case. Okay? So it's not the same jury.
Okay.
The grand jury just to charge you, the trial jury to prosecute you. So, and the trial jury can be 16 to 23 people. I mean, the grand jury can be 16 to 23 people, and the quorum can be 16. And all of them do not have to agree on prosecuting you. They can do it by majority rule. Whereas with the trial jury, in some cases, all of them got to say, yes, you're guilty, or you have a hung jury. Okay, so that way it works differently. So just know that the grand jury is to charge you. The trial jury is to prosecute you. Okay, that's the difference. You got anything?
That's all I want to get it clear.
Okay.
Well, we just today is Saturday weekend, and the case is Monday. So we're going to see what happens next.
But you got a two jury clear.
Yeah, it's clear. It's clear.
Okay. So I hope that
understand.
You the layman. I hope that all the other lay people get it. Okay.
I'm learning law. I'm learning law outside the classroom.
Yeah, that's what I say. You're the layman. You're not a lawyer, but you learning it. So as you ask the question, other people will learn it too. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay, get your closing statement.
Okay. Yeah, Liberia is at a crossroad, Rodney, and frankly speaking, Glapohkpa case is like somebody, some big person, has just died in this country. The city is so quiet, and people are discussing this. Lawyer people are not lawyer in the community, but they are still discussing it as though they are legal people. Some saying that the woman is guilty, and some are saying, but we haven't gone through the case. How do you know the woman is guilty?
Because
So it gotta be.
Sam, there are too many variables. You see, like
Yeah, and
I was listening to the I was listening to Rockefeller Cooper. He's the
mm,
what do you think name? The pathologist. And he was saying
yeah,
that when they accused Fanny Telly, when she
mm,
said he sprayed his eyes and all of that, the police did not do a forensic investigation of Telly
I'm telling you.
because Telly's eyes were swollen. They say he had cuts on his hands. He was supposed to be taken to the hospital.
Yes,
He was supposed to be taken to the hospital, let them check his eyes to make sure it wasn't gas there from the pepper spray. Because the pepper spray got residue. When people spray
mm-hmm.
your eyes, the residue stay in your eyes. When they take the smear of your eyes, they can tell whether there's oil from the residue. Pepper spray is oil. So when they spray you, you can go and take shower and then some residue will leave on you. And his eyes were swollen. His hands were cut. They did not do a forensic examination of that man. They just had him standing there.
But how the patron know that he was wounded? Because he was not invited or to go any kind of examination.
People were looking at
Uh,
him. They say he has some cuts on his hands. That's what people were saying during the interviews. They said when they call him, his
yeah,
eyes
but
was
but
swollen.
with all that the police
That's why
with all that the police
they had to carry him to a doctor. They didn't do that. You needed a medical forensic examination of Telly. Because if you spray his eyes with pepper spray, the residue gotta be there. The residue, and there's no telling that they man a bathe with soap. So if he doesn't bathe with soap, that residue will be there. So if they are taking him to the hospital where people could, and they have forensic people to do his eyes and see whether there's residue from pepper spray there, or look at his hands. Because sometimes when the pepper spray, you put your hands to your face. All those things can have residue. That's what they call forensic science, forensic investigation. You can't just look at a man and say, oh, your eyes swollen, you're guilty. No, because your eyes could be swollen for different reasons. You could rub your eye gets swollen. That's why you need forensic investigation. That's why we can't just speculate. That's speculation. Anything will happen to the man because when they brought Telly to the police, it was not the same night of the incident, right? It was days after the incident. They say he didn't go to the hour or something, all of that because he had eyes swollen. They go and tested his eyes to see if any residue of pepper spray were in it or around it. They could have tested his hands. They could have tested his clothes, his body. Some people don't bathe. So when they pepper spray, they got the residue on them. Okay? Our people use juju. Some of them, the juju say they can't bathe. They can't do certain things. So that when things happen like that, you use forensic science to check them out. And that I wonder why.
yeah, I think it's I've got it clear now.
Yeah,
It's understood.
I was wondering why everybody talking about Telly, and the one investigating the man. Because I didn't see anything at that time because I myself, I wasn't paying attention to the case. But now that the case is out, you got to find out whether the man was pepper sprayed or not. You can't just look at him and say, oh, yeah, I red. His eye could be red for different reasons and not pepper spray. I could rub my eye be red. I could smoke some dope and my eye be red. That don't mean I was pepper spray. So these are in his best interest and in our best interest. Our forensic science is important when it comes to murder and all these kind of criminal activities. Okay, Sam? Sam is gone. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me close up. He's gone. That's my show for this morning. And we'll find out on Monday when they go to court, where the court will say when these issues are raised by the prosecution, because I show the defendant still want to come out of jail. The defendant still want bail. So they're going to ask for bail. Then again, they're going to ask for the grand jury trial because that's a constitutional right. She must be afforded a grand jury trial. You can't just put a woman in jail at that. Okay, I rest my case. Let us pay attention to Monday morning and see where this case will take us. In the meantime, take heed and govern yourselves accordingly. My class is done. Attorney Commander J.R. Glapohkpa Chesson class is done. I'm out of here. I'll see you tomorrow.